Oh God! It's inside! An elephant! It broke through! Someone's down! Oh no, it's...
The silence of the African bush is deceiving. Beneath its quiet hum of chirps and rustling leaves lies a raw, primal force. A force that can rise without warning. In 2018, on a blistering afternoon, that silence was shattered, replaced by screams, chaos, and the sound of a life slipping away. This is the story of a place where the boundary between human and wild fades into mist. A land where giants roam and danger walks beside beauty. For some, it's the dream of a lifetime. For Mark Lautenbach, it was life itself. Mark wasn't just a man who lived in the wild. He belonged to it. A seasoned guide, a gifted wildlife photographer, and a quiet guardian of nature's untouched rhythms. He walked with predators, studied the unspoken wisdom of trees, and moved with a calm respect through territories ruled by instinct. But even the most connected soul, the most seasoned expert, can be caught off guard by the wilderness. In nature, there are no guarantees. One heartbeat too late, one step in the wrong place, and the land you love can turn fatal. This is the story of Mark Lautenbach, man who gave his life to the wild in the most terrifying way imaginable. Mark's name carried weight both in reputation and spirit. At just 33, he wasn't merely a safari guide. He was a living legend in South Africa's wildlife community. He was raised not in a city of glass and steel, but at the edge of untamed wilderness. The bush was his playground, his classroom, his home. From an early age, Mark learned to read the land like a second language. A distant crack of a twig, the subtle rustle of dry grass. Where others saw trees and trails, Mark saw stories. He wasn't just guiding tourists. He was capturing souls through a camera lens that had become an extension of his own eye. His photographs were more than images. They were moments suspended in time, intimate portraits of Africa's spirit, told with patience, reverence, and unmatched intuition. Collies spoke of his uncanny ability to anticipate animal behavior. He could read the flick of an ear, the twitch of a tail, a subtle tension in the air, and understand what it meant, not just as a tracker, but as someone who had earned the wild's trust. He wasn't showy, he wasn't loud. Mark was a watcher, a listener, a protector at Leopard Rock Lodge. Deep within the Madikwe Game Reserve, a breathtaking stretch of wilderness bordering Botswana, Mark thrived. The land was rich with life, elusive leopards, roaring lions, towering elephants, and vast herds, thundering across the plains. And in that place so alive, so unforgiving, Mark dedicated his every day to preserving its spirit. Until one day, when the wild struck back, Mark's encyclopedic knowledge of flora and fauna, his razor-sharp tracking instincts, and his calm, unshakable demeanor made him one of the most sought-after guides in South Africa. Travelers came from across the globe not just to spot the Big Five, but to see the bush through Mark's eyes. They came for his wisdom, stayed for his stories, and left changed by his passion. He often spoke with particular reverence about elephant steeds, intelligent, ancient giants that had captured his heart. He understood their complex social hierarchies, their astonishing memories, and their emotional depth. Mark saw them not merely as animals, but as living relics of an ancient earth, gentle yet powerful, majestic yet deeply vulnerable. But among them, one stood apart, a bull elephant. Not just any bull, an enormous solitary male, a creature of overwhelming presence, weighing over 6 tons and standing more than 10 feet tall at the shoulder. He was a mountain of muscle and instinct. His tusks were like polished ivory spears, scarred by decades of battles and the endless push through dense bushland. Even on a normal day, he was a force to be reckoned with. But this was no normal day. The bull was in must the natural, but volatile period in mature male elephants, characterized by a surge of reproductive hormones. During muth, testosterone levels can spike to 60 times their usual levels, triggering a flood of aggressive and unpredictable behavior. A bull in muth doesn't behave like other elephants. His mood turns on a dime. The familiar wariness of humans evaporates, replaced by defiance, dominance, and in some cases, deadly aggression. Thick, oily secretions oozed from his temporal glands, running down the sides of his head. His odor was potent, almost acrid and unmistakable to anyone familiar with the bush. He was a living warning sign, and this bull was well known on the reserve, a solitary wanderer. He often patrolled the boundaries like a phantom majestic, but sometimes surly. In recent weeks, his aggression had escalated. Rangers had seen him charge inanimate objects, block vehicle paths, and display a growing stubbornness that set everyone on edge. The message was clear: stay alert around this bull. Keep your distance. He's in MUSTH.4, Mark and his team. Such warnings were routine part of every morning briefing. But on this particular day, those warnings would erupt into something far more terrifying. It was the peak of the African summer. The heat was thick, heavy, almost hostile. The air carried the dry scent of cracked earth and distant thunderstorms. For days, subtle signs had been building. It wasn't just him. Other elephants had been acting strangely, more skittish, less tolerant. Even bulls, normally calm and aloof, had shown flashes of impatience. Breeding season was in full swing, and the entire reserve felt charged electric with tension. Rangers had begun to report breaches in the perimeter fences. Most were minor, caused by buffalo or small antelope, nothing unusual. But still, there was an underlying anxiety. Staff at the lodge were advised to be extra cautious. Eyes on the tree lines, radios always close. Mark, ever vigilant, had been watching the bull closely. He'd seen him testing the limits, pushing against trees, nosing at weak points in the fencing. His temporal glands had been weeping more heavily, his movements more brazen. And in the past weeks, Mark had experienced several close charges from the bull that were growing more aggressive with each encounter. What had once been theatrical bluffs now felt like genuine threats, and the wild, it seemed, was holding its breath. Just days before the tragedy, the bull had come, dangerously close to the lodge. It was evening golden hour, and the great beast appeared at the edge of the perimeter, trumpeting loudly, scattering vervet monkeys from the trees in a flurry of shrieks and motion. Guests had been thrilled, snapping photos from behind the safety of the lodge decks, unaware of the tension beneath the moment. But Mark had felt it. "He's getting bolder," he murmured to a colleague, eyes fixed on the giant. "He's feeling his power." There was a charge in the air, a sense that the invisible barrier between civilization and wilderness was no longer as firm as it once seemed. Safety protocols remained in place, logged, rehearsed, but nature was rewriting the rules. Leopard Rock Lodge had always prided itself on blending into the bush rather than building walls against it. The fences weren't fortresses, they were gentle deterrents, designed to preserve the immersive safari experience. Small animals passed freely, birds nested overhead, guests dined under the open sky, feeling part of the wild, but a 6-ton bull elephant in full. Muth wasn't part of the plan. He was a force of nature, unto himself. The lodge manager had even discussed a temporary guest relocation, but the elephant had disappeared again, vanishing into the deeper bush. The threat felt distant, until it wasn't. Each day, the bull returned, inching closer, less cautious, more confident. The problem wasn't neglect. It was the slow erosion of control, the steady realization that even the most prepared systems, when tested by raw, primal power, can falter. Safety didn't fail all at once. It wore down in pieces, carved away by a single animal's mounting fury. July 27th, 2018. The sun blazed overhead, a harsh, dry heat uncommon even for a South African winter's day. Guests lingered over lunch, sipping cool drinks, the air alive with chatter and the soft clinking of cutlery on porcelain. Mark had just returned from a morning drive. He was relaxed, speaking to a new group of arrivals with his signature calm, smile and dusty boots. 1:30 p.m. A sound, deep, low, subtle at first. It vibrated through the ground like a distant drumbeat. The tables shook ever so slightly. Not thunder, not a vehicle, something else. Heads turned, conversations slowed, faces tensed. 1:35 p.m. A crack rang out, sharp, clean, like a tree being snapped in half. Then another, then another. Panic rippled through the dining area. Staff stiffened. They knew that sound. 1:37 p.m. A scream from the kitchen. He's inside. The bull, he's inside. Somehow, the elephant had found a weak point in the perimeter roar. Perhaps he'd simply used brute strength to tear it apart like tissue. He didn't sneak in, he charged. Furious, unstoppable, he thundered into the lodge grounds like a battering ram. His temporal glands streamed with thick fluid. His trunk curled and waved, scenting the air. His eyes, usually calm and deep, were now red-rimmed, narrowed with aggression. His trumpet blast tore through the sky, gut deep and bone-rattling, sending birds into frantic flight. Mark didn't hesitate. He had trained for moments like this his entire life. He assessed the scene in an instant. Guests exposed, staff vulnerable, chaos spreading. There was no time to wait. No cavalry coming. It was him. He had to draw the bull away fast. Not with panic, not with fear, with presence, with control. Mark moved with purpose, but without haste, calm in the eye of the storm. He had faced this beast before. He knew how to read him, how to deflect, how to steer. He'd done it 100 times, 100 times. But this time, something was different. Mark grabbed the small portable air horn standard issue, often enough to startle an animal into retreat. It had worked countless times before, but as he stepped forward, placing himself between the furious bull and the screaming guests, now scrambling for safety, a terrible weight settled in his chest. "Mark, hey, get back, get away," someone shouted behind him. Too late, the bull turned. It locked eyes with him, dark, furious, unblinking. There was no fear, no hesitation. It didn't see a man, it saw an obstacle. 1:40 p.m. The elephant took a deliberate step forward, then another. Its trunk curled. Its massive ears flared wide, an unmistakable signal. This wasn't posturing, it was coming. Mark raised the air horn and let out a sharp, piercing blast. It might as well have been a whisper. The sound vanished beneath the animal's fury. If anything, it made it angrier. 1: for 1p.m. The charge. Full. Terrifying, unstoppable. 6 tons of muscle and rage barreled forward, tearing across the manicured lawn. The ground shook. The air snapped with tension. Guests screamed and ducked behind reinforced windows. Dishes clattered. Glass shattered. Mark stood frozen for the briefest moment, just long enough to hope the bull would veer off, to hope this was just another bluff. But this was different. This was real. He turned, trying to draw the elephant away from the main lodge just, as he'd done 100 times with other animals, in other moments. But he was too late. The bull hit him like a freight train. Eyewitnesses, crouched in helpless horror, watched the giant slam into him, its tusked head whipping with deadly force. Mark's body was thrown through the air like a rag doll. The air horn flew from his hand, bouncing uselessly across the grass. 1:42 p.m. The attack didn't end there. The elephant pressed its advantage, slamming Mark down, then bringing one colossal foot down with a bone-crunching weight, again and again. Each impact thudded through the ground, accompanied by a sound no one would ever forget. A sickening, wet crunch. It wasn't just violence, it was frenzy. The elephant thrashed husks, trunk, feet a blur of grey fury. Mark disappeared beneath. It lost beneath the chaos. The attack lasted only seconds, but to those who witnessed it, it stretched on forever. There was no stopping it, no saving him. To move closer would have meant certain death for anyone else. Then, silenced, the elephant paused. It stood over what remained of Mark, breathing hard, its trunk twitching, ears flapping with residual tension, and then, with a final, defiant trumpet, it turned, lumbering back toward the shattered perimeter fence, and vanished into the bush. The silence that followed was almost worse than the screams. A vacuum dot, a collective breath held in horror. Then, oh my God, Mark, he's not moving. Call someone, get paramedics now. 1:45 p.m. the 1st. Emergency calls flooded the lines. Voices cracked with shock and disbelief. Elephant attack. Ranger down. It's bad. Please send help, he's been trampled. Dispatchers tried to gather details, their training straining to meet the moment. Can you confirm the location? Is the animal still present? Is it safe to approach? Lodge staff, shaken and breathless. It's gone. But Mark, oh God, he's gone. 1:55 p.m. Armed rangers arrived first, faces grim, rifles raised. They moved slowly, scanning the area. The tension still lingered in the air, along with the metallic temps of blood and dust. They found Mark where he had fallen. No pulse check was needed. It was over. Clear, animal gone, deceased. 2:05 p.m. Paramedics arrived next. Their sirens had been silenced out of caution. They moved with the solemn efficiency that comes when hope is no longer an option. Mark Lautenbach was pronounced dead on the scene. His injuries were catastrophic. There had never been a chance. The guests, some still trembling, others in tears, began to speak. Their voices were soft, fractured. Witness 1. He was so brave, he went toward it. No hesitation, just trying to protect us. Witness 2. It happened so fast. 1 second he was there, and then, just grey and rage. The noise, it won't leave me. Law enforcement arrived to begin the formal investigation, but there were no suspects. No easy answers, only the brutal, immutable truth. Mark had died protecting the people under his care, killed by the very wildness he had devoted his life to understanding. And within hours, the news spread, from lodge staff to neighboring guides, from conservation networks to national headlines. then out into the world. Veteran safari ranger killed in elephant attack at luxury lodge. Hero guide dies, shielding guests from rogue bull elephant. The man who had lived for the wild had died by it. The death of Mark Lautenbach wasn't just another tragic footnote in the vast, unpredictable story of the wild. It was a devastating blow to his colleagues, to the community, and to all who knew him. The autopsy confirmed what those who witnessed the attack already feared: massive internal trauma, countless fractures, injuries consistent with being crushed repeatedly by an elephant of staggering size and strength. The doctors said it was instant, that he wouldn't have felt it. A small mercy in the face of such horror. The media descended quickly. Headlines screamed, "Safari Ranger trampled to death by elephant tragedy in Madcay." Beloved guide lost in the wild. Photographs of Mark soon flooded the news, smiling, vibrant, full of life, holding his camera, standing proudly by his safari vehicle, sun on his face. That image of joy, of purpose clashed violently with the brutal truth of how his life ended. The story ignited a storm of public reaction. Animal rights advocates demanded answers. Some condemned the lodge for failing to protect its staff. Others defended the elephant, arguing that it was only following instinct, a wild animal reacting as nature intended. Conservation groups across the globe mourned Mark's loss, but even in grief, they acknowledged the stark truth. This is the reality of wildlife management. The wild is never safe, and never truly tame. Inside the Madcay Game Reserve, shock gave way to urgent questions. The bull elephant responsible was still out there, still in must, still dangerously aggressive. After agonizing deliberation, the decision was made. The bull had to be put down. It went against everything the team stood for. These were people who had dedicated their lives to protecting wildlife, not destroying it. But this wasn't about vengeance. It was about safety, about preventing another tragedy. A specialized team tracked the elephant. The end, when it came, was swift, clean, silent justice delivered by those who understood that sometimes the hardest decisions are also the most necessary. But the backlash came quickly. Protesters denounced the killing. The elephant was just being an elephant, they cried, but those who lived and worked among these giants knew better. A musk bull, driven by hormones and rage, is not just unpredictably. An internal review was launched. Every fence line inspected, every safety protocol dissected, every decision retraced. There were no lapses, no signs of negligence. Mark had done everything right. He had acted instinctively, bravely. The elephant had acted on primal fury sometimes. In the wild, even with the best intentions and the most rigorous precautions, tragedy finds its way through. The ripple effects were immediate and widespread. Other lodges re-evaluated their own safety measures. Conservationists renewed debates around managing musk bulls in protected spaces. The conversation shifted again. The fragile balance between human presence and untamed nature. For those who knew Mark personally, the loss was immeasurable. Tributes poured in from around the world. They remembered him not just as a ranger but as a gifted photographer, a gentle soul, a fierce protector, and a man who carried Africa in his bones. His death became a haunting reminder of the risks that come with working in wild places, a reminder that even under the warmest sun, in the most serene landscapes, danger moves in silence. Waiting, Mark Lautenbach stepped into the path of a six-ton force of instinct and rage, not out of foolishness, not out of pride, but out of a profound sense of duty. He lived for the wild, and he died in its embrace, in the tall, whispering grasses of Madkay, where the wind carries both memory and warning. The echo of that final trumpet hand, the man who stood against it still lingers. A quiet truth drifts through the reserve, in the heart of the wild. Man is never more than a guest,